We can now go live to Counterpoint's host, Melinda Nusafora, who is live from the NATO summit at The Hague for us. Melinda, there was a lot of concern leading up to this summit, and that was that the US wouldn't recognize NATO's joint defense pact. Have those fears now pretty much been squashed?
Well, we heard President Trump, Leanne, referring to that joint defence in his comments that you've played just there, and that was the big concern leading into this NATO summit. It circles around Article 5. That is the joint defence pact of NATO, that an attack on one is an attack on all. Now, President Trump has made no secret of his scepticism of these multinational groupings such as NATO. It simply doesn't fit with his America First standing. So when he was asked on Air Force One on his journey into The Hague whether the US would come to Europe's defence, he was pretty vague. He said there's a lot of ways you can interpret Article 5, and that really struck fear into the hearts of leaders and the defence ministers of the other NATO countries. So it was with a big sigh of relief that the countries heard the US President recommit to Article 5. He's said things during his closing press conference. He said that he is viewing the alliance a little differently now, he says, after hearing how much these leaders love their countries. And he gave what he called an ironclad promise that the US would be here to help them protect their country. So that's one concern off the table at the NATO summit. There was another surprising moment that involved the US president in the lead up to the NATO Hague meeting, and that was on his way in, once again, that expletive-ridden comments about Iran and Israel. He was asked about that in his opening press conference that he had side by side with the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. He was asked to clarify those comments, and that led to, once again, another pretty surprising moment here at the NATO summit with the Secretary General Mark Rutte. Have a listen to what the two men said.
They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes, then it's easier to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes do strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while you have to use a certain word.
Yes, of course, Mark Rutte there calling Donald Trump daddy. Melinda, it's been trending on Twitter all day, and also the fact that Marco Rubio laughed about it a little bit later on when Donald Trump was asked about the daddy comments. So something that's been causing a bit of a stir on social media. But the other big focus of this year's Leaders Summit was the agreement to boost defense spending. This has been a hot topic. Can you break it down for us?
Yeah, well, maybe NATO's daddy had to put his foot down when it came to defence spending as well, because this has been a real sticking point for the US President Donald Trump. If you cast your minds back to 2018, this was the point where he said the US could walk if other European countries didn't stump up more defence spending. And even though there was a lot of concern leading into the summit, they do seem to have gotten it over the line. It's going to be an increase from the current 2% defence spending target to 5% of GDP. But there is a little bit of creative accounting here, because it is actually only 3.5% of GDP on actual frontline spending. So that's things like ammunition, weaponry, missile defence, that sort of frontline protection and boots on the ground weaponry. The extra 1.5 is on what they're terming defence infrastructure, cyber security. It can even be used for countries to improve their roads, with the argument that that would allow troops to move more easily around the continent. So What it is being interpreted as by defence experts on the outskirts here in the media centre of the NATO summit is that this is a compromise. It allows President Trump and NATO to say, yep, we've had a success, we're all stumping up now to 5%, but it gives some wriggle room to some of these cash-strapped European countries that are going to find that really hard to sell to their domestic audiences. One of those countries is Spain. It's the only country that is not saying within absolute clarity that it will commit to 5%. The Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, saying that he believes Spain can meet its commitment without reaching that 5% of GDP goal. Not surprisingly, that has drawn the ire of US President Donald Trump, and he's even threatening that he's going to double the tariffs, toughen up the trade deal against Spain unless it falls into line.
Melinda Nusafora, Counterpoint's host, thank you so much for joining us.